All right, in this lesson, we are going to review combining like terms. So as a warm-up, we are going to review how to distribute. And so whenever you see a number outside the parentheses, that means you are multiplying that number by each term, which is separated by plus and minus signs, in the parentheses. So 7 times 5m is 35m. 7 times negative 9 is negative 63. Do not combine those because these are not like terms. Here we're distributing a negative 3, and so negative 3 times 7 is negative 21. Negative 3 times negative 2 is positive 6b. When you multiply two negatives, it becomes positive. When we write our final answer, we always put terms with variables before terms without. So the constant will always come last. And so the ideal final answer would be 6b minus 21. Here it was 35m minus 63. Here we're distributing a fraction. And so when you are distributing a fraction, you are multiplying by the numerator and dividing by the denominator. And so 2/5 times 5, 2 times 5 is 10, divided by 5 is 2 with the x. 2 times 10 is 20, divided by 5 is 4. And so our final answer would be 2x plus 4. Next, we're distributing 6g. So 6g times the 4, and then 6g times the negative 2g. So 6 times 4 is 24, and then we still have the g. 6 times negative 2 is negative 12, and then g times g would give us g squared. These are not like terms because g squared cannot be combined with g to the first. But we do want to put the g squared before the positive 24g, keeping their signs, the negative 12 and the positive 24. We always write our final answer from highest exponent to lowest exponent. So the ideal final answer would be negative 12g squared plus 24g. Okay, and so like terms, you've heard me say like terms, means that we have the exact same variable, which is the letter, and same exponent. So for example, g squared and g are not like terms because one has a square and one does not, even though they're the same letter. And then we write our answers in descending order, just like we did number 4. G squared goes before g. So highest exponent to lowest exponent. Okay, and so when we're combining like terms, we have terms that have the same variable and same exponent. And so the point of combining like terms, I call it cleaning up the grocery list. If you have a grocery list to shop for, you don't want apples to appear on that list twice. You don't want me to say, get 2 apples, and then later in your trip, get 7 more. You'd rather me combine those and just say, get 9 apples. And so that's the same idea here. And so some of these have multiple variables. In that case, we're going to write them in alphabetical order. Okay, so for our first example, I like to highlight like terms, kind of match them up. So we have 3x and then negative 5x. Always highlight the sign with it. And then we also have a 4x. So they're all right next to each other. So 3x plus 4x is 7x. Take away 5x, that would give us 2 x's. Kind of like apples. 3 apples, 4 apples, take away 5 apples. That would leave us with 2 apples. And then here we have y's. So negative 1y minus 9y. If you like, I like to fill in the invisible 1. Whenever there's not a number in front, that coefficient is a invisible 1. And so if we have negative 1y and negative 9y, that gives us negative 10y's. X and y are not the same letter, so we can't combine those. And so our final answer would just be 2x minus 10y. Next, we're kind of reviewing what we did last class as well. We see parentheses. So whenever you see parentheses, you have to take care of those first, just like PEMDAS. And so the parentheses tell us to distribute this negative 2. And so negative 2 times the r and negative 2 times the 4 would give us negative 2r minus 8. And then we haven't done anything with this 6r, and then we haven't done anything with this plus r squared. Now that the parentheses are gone, we're ready to combine our like terms. We have a 6r and a negative 2r. And then those are the only like terms we have. And so 6r minus 2r is 4r. We still have this r squared. We're going to write him in front. And then we're going to put the negative 8 at the end. And so our final answer in the correct order is r squared plus 4r minus 8. Okay, next up, I see parentheses, so that tells me I'm going to have to distribute. And in this case, there's only a minus sign in front. So whenever you see that, go ahead and fill in the invisible 1, because that means you are distributing a negative 1 into the parentheses. And so negative 1 times t would give me negative 1t. If you want, you can write the 1. Negative 1 times negative 4 would give me positive 4. And then we're going to bring down the 8x, and we're going to bring down the 15t. And so our only like terms here are 15t minus 1t, which would give us 14t. We would write the 8x in front. Wait. QRS, TUVW. Okay, so x would come after t because we're going in alphabetical order, and then we're going to put the constant at the end. And so our final answer would be 14t plus 8x plus 4. And honestly, I wouldn't count it wrong if you had the t second and the x first, as long as you don't combine them. And recognize on a multiple choice test that those are the same answer in either order. All right, this last one's probably the hardest. We've got a lot of fractions to intimidate you. And so we're distributing a 2/3 to this first set of parentheses. And we are distributing a negative 3/4 to the second set of parentheses. Okay, and so we're going to do that first. So 2/3 times g is still just 2/3 g. And then 2 times the 1 is 2. 3 times the 2 is 6. Whenever you multiply fractions, you just multiply the numerators, multiply the denominators. And then there's still an f there. And we'll be able to simplify that 2/6 to 1/3, but we'll do that in the next step. Next, we're distributing a negative 3/4. And so negative 3 times 8 is negative 24. And it's still going to be divided by 4, but I'll wait and do that in the next step. And then negative 3/4 times g is negative 3/4 g. Okay, and so in this next step, I'm going to go ahead and simplify those fractions. 2/6 is 1/3. Negative 24 over 4 is negative 6. And then we have our negative 3/4 g. All right, so our only like terms here are the g terms. We have 2/3 minus 3/4. So 2/3 minus 3/4 for our g term. We're going to need a common denominator. And so the common denominator between 3 and 4, we can turn those both into a 12. And so I'm going to multiply the first fraction by 4, top and bottom, to get 8/12 as our equivalent fraction. And then I have my minus sign. And then 3 times 3 is 9. 4 times 3 is 12. So 3/4 is the same as 9/12. Now that I have my common denominator, 8/12 minus 9/12 is negative 1/12. Okay, and so I'm going to write the f term first, 1/3 f. And then we have our negative 1/12 g. And then we have our constant at the very end, minus 6. So our final answer is 1/3 f minus 1/12 g minus 6. Okay, and all right, for these next 4 examples, we've got multiple sets of parentheses, some distribution happening. And so starting with number 5, we are distributing a negative 1 to the first set of parentheses. And we are distributing a positive 3 to the second set of parentheses. So go ahead and bring down your 3c. Negative 1 times 4c is negative 4c. Negative 1 times 6k is negative 6k. Next set of parentheses, 3 times k is 3k. 3 times negative c is negative 3c. And so for our like terms, we have c's and we have k's. Oh, I forgot a c. And so 3c minus 3c is no c's, and so we still have a negative 4c. Negative 6k plus 3k is negative 3k. And so our final answer is negative 4c minus 3k. Next, there's nothing to distribute and then nothing to combine. We have an x squared term and then we have an x term. Those are not the same. Same letter, but not same exponent. So the only thing we have to do on number 6 is just put it in the correct order, descending order. So 5x squared would go first, followed by the x, followed by the negative 4. Take that negative with it. And so our final answer would just be 5x squared plus x minus 4. Here we have 2 sets of parentheses. The first set of parentheses doesn't have a number or a negative sign, so technically we're just distributing a positive 1, which will not change anything inside those parentheses. The second example, we're distributing a negative 1. That will change the parentheses to negative n squared plus 4n. Basically flips the sign of everything after. And so the 4n squared plus 3 doesn't change. And so now we can combine our like terms. 4n squared minus n squared is 3n squared. And then we have a 4n that can't combine with anything. And then lastly, we have our constant, which is 3. So our final answer is 3n squared plus 4n plus 3. This next example is similar. We're distributing a positive 1, so nothing is going to change in the first set of parentheses. But for the second set of parentheses, we're distributing a negative 1. So all these signs are going to change. So negative 3t squared plus t plus 8. And so we have t squareds to combine. 4t squared minus 3t squared is just t squared. And then negative 3t plus t is negative 2t. And then our constant is 5 plus 8, which is 13. So we have t squared minus 2t plus 13 as our final answer. All right, the last 2 examples are application problems. And so we are talking about perimeter. And so if you'll remember, perimeter means you add up all the sides. Okay, and so here we have a rectangle. We have 3x inches along the top and then 4 inches along the side. That means along the bottom is also 3x and along the left side is also 4. And so when we add up the sides, we need to combine our like terms. So we have 3x plus 3x, which would be 6x. And then we have 4 plus 4, which would be 8. And so our perimeter is 6x plus 8. For our area, that's when we multiply the length times width. Okay, so in this case, our length is 4, and then our width is 3x. And so 4 times 3x is just 12x. Okay, last one. We're doing perimeter and area. And then because we had units in the first example, we need to include the units. Inches plus inches is still inches. Inches times inches is inches squared, or square inches. Area is square inches. Here we don't have units, and so we don't need to write units in our answer. That's important for AP tests. They look at stuff like that. Not that you'll be taking the AP test for this class, but if you do take an AP class. Okay, and so for perimeter, we're adding up the sides. 5H plus 8H, that's all we can combine to get 13H. And then we have a lonely 4 that can't combine with the H's. And then for our area in this case, it's base times height divided by 2 since it's a triangle. Our base is 5H. Our base is 4. This is our base. This is our height. And that's confusing because we're using H as a variable. So I'll do capital base height divided by 2. So we have 4, and then our height is 5H divided by 2. Gives us 20H on top divided by 2, which would just be 10H.